In a shadowy and menacing castle, the Demon Lord prepares to launch his campaign to conquer the world. To aid him, he summons his 4 demonic generals: Alandra, the Inferno, Suid, the Storm, Gnome, the Earth, and Bastion, and, last but not least, the most jaded and soulless of them all, an underpaid Japanese salaryman. Denisuk began his career at the company as an unremarkable salaryman, filled with hope and confidence that he would eventually climb the promotion ladder. However, while Denizo dedicated himself to working hard for the company, his co-workers focused on currying favor with the boss. As a result, they received the promotions Denisuk had been striving for, while he was unceremoniously sent to another country to assist with the company's expansion efforts. Upon arrival, Dennis found that literally nothing was getting done because the site had no funding. He tried to convince his boss to approve more funding so they could buy the necessary equipment, but that would cost money. So his boss refused and yelled at him for wasting resources. The locals couldn't care less about the job if they weren't going to be given the necessary tools, so they left, leaving Dennis to do everything by himself. Seeing how tirelessly Denisuk was working all on his own, the locals were inspired and eventually came back to assist him. With their help, he finally managed to get everything up and running. Just as he thought things were settling down, he received a call from his boss. Denisuk initially believed his efforts had finally been acknowledged and hoped for a well-deserved bonus. However, he couldn't have been more wrong. There wasn't even a token pizza party in his honor. Instead, all he got for his relentless hard work was even more work. His company decided to transfer him to yet another country for a different expansion project. By this point, Denisuk had begun to question his life choices, realizing that he was wasting his life for a company that clearly didn't care about him. While distracted by his existential dread, he wasn't paying attention to his surroundings and ended up getting run over by Moped K. That kind of explains how he ended up here, but Denisuk thinks there must have been some kind of mistake because there's no way the Demon Lord meant to summon a guy like him. The Demon Lord addresses Dennis by name and informs him that he has been summoned to serve as his new overseas manager. The Demon Lord explains that he has thoroughly reviewed reports detailing Dennis's relentless efforts, being assigned to his company's overseas branch, mastering the local language, and earning the trust of the locals to successfully establish the business. Based on these accomplishments, the Demon Lord is convinced that Denisuk is the ideal candidate to become one of his 4 elite generals. Denisuk is kind of happy, since this is the first time anyone has actually acknowledged all the hard work he's been putting in. However, he's hesitant to accept the position of Demon General, because that would technically mean betraying humanity. The Demon Lord mentions that the position comes with full workers' benefits, and suddenly Denisuk doesn't think joining the Demon Army is such a bad idea anymore. Moreover, the Demon Lord genuinely values workers' rights, so he makes it clear that Dennis won't be forced to take the job if he's not interested. This approach makes Dennis feel even more inclined to join. Reflecting on his past, he recalls how poorly he was treated at his previous company, making him doubt whether someone like him is worthy of such an important position. Just as he's about to turn down the Demon Lord's offer, the Demon Lord interrupts, declaring that Denisuk shouldn't let the mistreatment he faced at his old workplace determine his self-worth. The Demon Lord reminds Denisuk that his old company was run by obnoxious, selfish managers who only cared about themselves and would never pay attention to all the work he was putting in behind the scenes. The Demon Lord won't make that mistake because he knows how valuable Denisuk is as an employee. Now Denisuk has a choice: go back to his old company and be treated like trash once more, or stay here and help build the Demon Army. Denisuk remains reluctant to accept, but before he can respond, Alandra suddenly speaks up, voicing her objection to the idea of a weak human joining the Demon Army. Silid and Gnome quickly chime in as well, doubting how someone like Denisuk could possibly be of any use. Acknowledging their skepticism, the Demon Lord decides to put Dennis through a test to prove to the others just how capable he truly is. Denisuk starts freaking out, trying to explain to the Demon Lord that he has no powers and can't fight. But it's already too late. Alandra decides to attack him at full force to see what he's made of. She's heard something about otherworldly humans possessing special powers and tells Denisuk to try and stop her deadly kick. Just as the kick is about to land, the Demon Lord steps in and intercepts it. Mandra, confused, asks why he stopped her. But the Demon Lord calmly explains that she didn't let him finish speaking and completely misunderstood the situation. He gestures toward poor Denisuk, who had been so terrified by the ordeal that he fainted from the shock. The others are surprised because Alandro wasn't even trying that hard for Denisuk to pass out from an attack like that. It makes it seem like he's just a regular human. The Demon Lord informs them that Denisuk truly is just an ordinary human, which only fuels the others' objections further. They argue that the demon army is entirely comprised of monsters, and if a human were to get involved in the ongoing power struggle between the demons and demi-humans, he would be devoured almost immediately. The demon lord acknowledges the existing friction among the factions within his army, but he insists that this is precisely why he needs Denisuk and the unique skills he brings to the table. He clarifies that he's not looking for someone with a durable body or immense attack power. Instead, what he values most in Denisuk is his ingenuity and resourcefulness. Just then Denisuk finally regains consciousness and begins pleading for them to let him go, because there's no way he can deal with attacks like the one Mandra just tried to hit him with. The demon lord tells him to calm down and explains that he won't be expected to fight, but he does intend to give Denisuk a fitting exam. He explains that the demon army is currently trying to create a pact with the surrounding tribes. So far they've managed to reach agreements with the Salamanders and Werewolves West, but negotiations with the Minotaur tribe have been quite difficult. Denis's test will be to do whatever it takes to form a pact with the minor tribe. With Denis's exceptional negotiation skills, the demon lord believes it should be straightforward to earn the trust of the miners and strike a peaceful agreement. Denu, however, fails to see anything simple about trying to negotiate with miners. Despite his doubts, the demon lord is confident in his abilities and encourages Denisuk to consult Mandra if he has any questions. Afterwards, Mandra leads Dent down the hall so he can begin negotiating with the Minotaur. She thinks this is a huge waste of time, since there's no way a human like Denisuk can negotiate with Minotaur. Denisuk also thinks she's right about him being useless, but the demon lord seemed so sincere when he talked about how much he needed Denisuk. All Denisuk has ever wanted is to have his hard work recognized, so he wants to live up to the demon lord's expectations as much as he can. At that moment, Mandra informs Denisuk that they've arrived at the meeting room where the minor tribe's chief is waiting. Denisuk is taken aback by the enormous size of the room, but Mandra explains that it's only natural, since Minotaur are such large creatures. As a word of caution, she warns him that Minotaur are notoriously ferocious, and if he isn't careful he might find himself trampled to death as Alandra opens the door. Denisuk has no idea what to expect ECT from the minor chief, but he intends to do his best to negotiate no matter what. However, once he actually sees the minor chief, he freaks out. There's no way he could negotiate with someone like Tyrius without instantly dying. Alandra feels bad for him, so she offers to help with the negotiations, and Denisuk is really thankful for the help. But then he sees Mandra start arguing with Tyrius, and he gets the feeling that negotiations aren't going so well. Alandra can't comprehend why Tyrius is dissatisfied with everything they've offered him. Tyrius claims that she doesn't understand what he's trying to say, and as a result, no progress is made on the pact. Frustrated, Mandra leaves the meeting room. She struggles to understand why Tyrius is now so resistant to the agreement, especially since he was initially open to the idea. Just as they were about to finalize the deal, he suddenly started shouting blah blah repeatedly, despite returning several times to see if he might change his mind. All Tyrius ever says is blah, leaving Alandra completely unable to figure out what he wants. Alandra can't possibly see a resolution, so she's going to leave the rest for Denisuk to figure out. Although she fully expects him to fail miserably, Denisuk starts having a full-on panic attack because he thinks there's no way to get around this mess. As he's walking through the halls trying to figure out what to do, he spots a bar sign and decides to head in to clear his head. The bartender hands him a warm towel to help him relax, and Denisuk orders a drink. As he takes a seat to gather his thoughts, he wants to focus on the negotiations, but he feels stuck since there's little he can do if the client outright refuses to negotiate. However, as he reflects, Denisuk begins to suspect that Tyrius might not actually be rejecting the negotiations entirely. He recalls a similar experience from his past, where a client kept saying no, but by carefully reading the client's eyes, he was able to discern their true intentions, ultimately leading to a successful agreement for both parties. Now Denisuk knows what he needs to do. He finishes his drink and heads outside to do what businessmen do: negotiate. Meanwhile, Mandra is back in the Demon Lord's throne room giving a report about her conversation with Tyrius. It didn't lead to any meaningful breakthrough, so she doesn't think Denis will be able to achieve anything either, especially since he just arrived in this world today. The Demon Lord, however, still believes in Denisuk and urges Mandra to wait and see what he's capable of achieving. Though Alandra doesn't understand what the Demon Lord sees in Denisuk, she decides to check on him to ensure he's doing all right. When she finds him, he's busy stuffing several bags full of hay. Curious, she asks what he's up to, and Denisuk explains that he's preparing to have a proper conversation with Tyrius. She tries to tell him that it's pointless since Tyrius isn't willing to negotiate. But Denisuk still thinks there's a chance. He just needs to look Tyrius in the eyes and convey his emotions properly so the two of them can understand each other. Alandra observes that Denisuk seems much more confident than before, and this time he enters the meeting room to speak with Tyrius without a trace of fear. The next morning, Mandra goes to the meeting room to check if Denisuk has survived the night. However, when she peers inside, she's met with the sight of a room filled with hay. But neither Denisuk nor Tyrius is anywhere where to be found. At first, she thinks the negotiations must have failed, leading to a massive fight. But just then Danu comes in and tells her everything is fine. In that case, she wants to know why there's hay all over their sacred demon castle, and more importantly, she asks where Tyrius went. Denizo tells her that Tyrius is currently finalizing the pact agreement with the Demon Lord. Mandra is stunned that Denisk managed to secure Toss's agreement in just one night. Denisk explains that all he did was take the time to understand Tyrius better, which made the negotiation process surprisingly simple. Alandra had assumed Tyrius was refusing to negotiate because he kept shouting blah repeatedly. However, as it turns out, Tyrius actually believed the negotiations were progressing smoothly all along. Denisk had experienced something like this before with an international client. The client in question was really enthusiastic about saying no to him. So Dennis thought the negotiation was going to end in failure. But to his surprise, the man then reached out for a handshake and he realized it was all a misunderstanding. The same thing applied to Tyrius. Denisuk took some time to research Minotaur culture and discovered that Minotaurs always bring hay with them to use as ding whenever they visit someone else's home. It turned out that Tyrius had been trying to request his hay all along. Once Denisuk realized this, the negotiation proceeded without any further issues. Now Man realizes that she had misunderstood Tyrius and left him in that room to sleep on the cold floor. So she feels really bad. But Tyrius tells her it's all right, since it was an honest mistake, and he shakes her hand to show that there are no hard feelings. As Tyrius departs, the Demon Lord approaches Denisuk and Alandra. He asks Alandra if she now understands why he's so eager to have Denisuk join their ranks. Alandra concedes that Denisuk truly has remarkable skill when it comes to Negat negotiations, having successfully passed the Demon Lord's test. Denisuk is officially appointed as one of the Demon Lord's 4 generals. To mark this new position, the Demon Lord places a bracelet on Denis's arm as a symbol of his authority. As a gesture of her newfound respect for Denisuk, Alandra formally introduces herself and expresses her eagerness to work alongside him. As a new friend, Denos is gradually finding his footing as one of the demon generals. It's a relief that he now has his own office and a boss who seems supportive, but it's clear this new environment will take some time to adjust to. Now that his position as one of the demon generals is official, Denos decides it's only right to formally introduce himself to the others. With that in mind, he makes his way to Sid's room and gives a knock at the door. To his surprise, it's a girl who answers and asks him what he wants. Denos explains that he's here to introduce himself to Silid. However, the girl responds curtly, informing him that she's Sid's assistant and that Svid is a very busy man, so she can't allow Denos to bother him. Denos is disappointed, but knew he was bound to face some pushback from the other demon generals. He decides to just come back later to try again. However, before he could leave, Mandra comes running up to him because she has something important to say. The Demon Lord has another assignment for Denos, so Denos goes to meet with him immediately and is informed of an agreement he is working on. For the demon army to grow in strength, he needs the support of all the surrounding Demium nations. And among all those nations, the Ogre tribe is particularly influential. Their military strength rivals that of the demon army, making them a potential threat to the demon empire if they were to turn hostile. For this reason, the Demon Lord is aiming to hold merger negotiations with them to unite their forces. However, the ogres are famously difficult to bargain with, and so far no agreements have been made. Even so, with Denos handling the matter, the Demon Lord is confident that an agreement can be reached, which is why he's granting Denos full authority over the negotiations. While Denos is grateful for the Demon Lord's trust in him, he can't ignore the very real danger of potentially losing his life to the ogres if he goes alone. Alandra volunteers to escort him to the ogre tribe. However, before that, Denos says he wants to go meet with Gnome, since she's in charge of the Demium division of the demon army, and she might have some valuable information about the ogres. Alandra thinks Denos is right, but absolutely refuses to go anywhere near Gnome because she has beef with her. So instead she says she'll go check on the carriages. While Denos talks with Gnome, Denos makes his way to the training grounds, where Gnome is conducting her daily training session. He is thoroughly impressed by what he observes. Not only are Gnome's soldiers highly skilled in combat, but she also excels at keeping their morale exceptionally high. After the training concludes, Gom turns her attention to Denas and inquires about the reason for his visit. Denas explains that he is there to ask if she has any information about the ogre tribe. Gnome admits she doesn't know much, but mentions that their leader, Augur, is infamous for being incredibly difficult to engage in conversation. She warns Denas that negotiating with him will be a significant challenge. Unfortunately, she explains there's little she can do to assist in this matter. Besides, she has no interest in collaborating with Mandra under any circumstances, so she firmly asks Denas to take her away from there. Denas didn't even realize Mandra had been standing behind him, so he asks her why she's here and why she's so angry. Well, Mandra says she already finished checking the carriages, so she came to get Denas since she was worried about him. But she can't contain herself. After seeing Gnome, the two start arguing, and Denas is starting to get worried about how much Mandra and Gnome hate each other. Denas and Alandra finally reach the ogre castle, but before they can go inside, they are halted at the gate and informed that they must wait for Chief's permission to enter. Alandra finds it absurd that they are being left outside for so long, but Denas, having encountered this tactic before, realizes that Ogre is deliberately using the delay to unsettle them and weaken their ability to negotiate effectively. He knows it's crucial for them to remain composed. However, Mandra is barely managing to contain her growing fury and seems ready to lose her temper. Thankfully, before she can act out, August's assistant comes out and tells the two that they may now enter. As they walk in, Denas notices how scruffy Ogre's armor looks. Eventually, they make it to Augur's throne room and come face to face with Augur himself. But when Mandra tries to start the negotiations, he tells her to shut up. He doesn't care why they are here, because he's never going to listen to what they have to say, unless, of course, they came to surrender to him, in which case he might hear them out, but only if they agreed to kill their chief, the Demon Lord. Alandra can hardly believe the sheer absurdity of what just came out of Augur's mouth, and she's seconds away from losing it completely. However, Denas quickly grabs her hand, urging her to stay calm, reminding her that a violent reaction is precisely what Augur is trying to provoke. Turning to Augur, Denas speaks in his most composed and professional tone, stating that he and Alandra are stepping outside for a quick discussion. Once they're outside, Alandra unleashes her fury, ranting about Augur's audacity and cursing his very existence for daring to say such a thing. She's absolutely ready to march back in and rip him apart, but Denas manages to steady her, reiterating that reacting to Augur's provocation is playing right into his hands. He is intentionally saying things to get them angry in hopes that they cause a scene, so negotiate a breakdown. That way he can avoid directly rejecting the negotiation and blame its failure on the two of them. Now that she knows what Air was trying to do, Alandra decides to calm herself down, but she's still really frustrated by the fact that Augur insulted the Demon Lord. To be honest, Denas is just as angry, but acting on that anger would only hurt their chances of success here, so they have to be careful about how they respond. That said, Augur has no intention of negotiating, leaving them with few options at this stage. At that moment, the girl they encountered earlier appears and introduces herself as Alialu, Augur's daughter. Acknowledging that her timing might seem impolite, she hesitantly makes a request. She asks for Denas and Mandra's assistance in handling her father. Alialu then guides them to a vacant room, explaining that it serves as the food cellar, and as they complain, see, it's completely empty. The ogres are known for their strength and influence among the Demium, but recently they've run into financial trouble, and it has gotten so bad that a lot of their people are struggling to find food to eat. Denas assumed something like this was going on because when they came in he saw the terrible state of the ogre's equipment, along with the cold and empty feeling he got from the castle itself. This kind of situation usually occurs when large companies begin to decline. They make it seem like everything's going well, but on the inside they are constantly on the brink of bankruptcy. That's exactly what's going on with the ogre tribe, and Alialu believes that the only way to rebuild it is to rely on the demon army's help. Her father, however, refuses to listen to her, and, to make matters worse, he's currently ill. They've been trying to keep his condition a secret, which is why they had Alandra and Denas wait outside earlier while they prepared him for the meeting. But his health is steadily deteriorating. Augur doesn't have much time left, and if he were to die under the current circumstances, it would spell disaster for their tribe desperate. She begs Denas for his help. While Denas acknowledges her concerns, he also reprimands her for divulging such critical information as the chief's daughter. She needs to exercise greater caution when deciding who to trust. Alialu can tell that Denas is a good person. She's pretty confident in her ability to discern the nature of people, which is why she told him about the situation. Now she asks Denas to help her save the ogre tribe by marrying her. After hearing this, Denas freaks out and Mandra begins burning with rage. But Alialu is serious about her proposal, All the ogres in her tribe are as dumb as rocks, so the only way for Alulu to ensure the prosperity of the tribe is for a smart guy like Denos to marry her and become the new chief. Denos attempts to dissuade Alulu from making any hasty decisions, but she's adamant that this is the only way to save the ogre tribe. She's even ready to make their marriage official on the spot, but Mandra steps in and prevents it from happening. Later that evening, Denos finds himself in his office, grappling with the predicament. He's an ogre refuses to negotiate and Alulu is determined to marry him. Failing his second mission for the Demon Lord is not an option, so he decides to retreat to the bar in his mind to clear his thoughts. This time, however, Denos isn't alone. His imaginary version of Alandra is seated at the table next to him, engaged in a lively debate with the bartender over which is cooler, gorillas or lions. Realistically, a gorilla could wipe the floor with a lion any day, but Alandra argues that lions are cooler because a group of them is called a pride. The moment Denos hears this, he snaps out of his trance, and suddenly he has a brilliant and foolproof plan to tackle the situation. The next morning, Denos calls Mandra outside. He apologizes for waking her up so early, but explains that he needs her help for a new negotiation plan. For S plan to work, they need to go somewhere else first. If all goes well, Augur will be the one begging for a negotiation meeting. 1 week later, Denos and Alandra are called into the chief's throne room, just as Denos had planned, and Augur looks pretty mad. Augur has just learned that all the neighboring tribes have allied with the demon army over the past week, and he demands an explanation. A week earlier, Denos had shared his strategy with Alandra. Rather than focusing on convincing Augur, they would first recruit the smaller tribes. It wouldn't be too difficult since, like Augur's tribe, the other tribes were also grappling with food shortages, making them susceptible to the promise of support. While Mandra grasped the logic behind Den's plan, she hadn't anticipated it would succeed so effectively. By forcing Augur into negotiations, Denos' strategy mirrored what he used to do when selling products back on Earth. If he tried to approach a big company directly, he would usually be rejected. Instead, he would market to smaller companies first, and eventually the big company would be forced to contact him to avoid being left behind. Similarly, if all the surrounding demi-humans joined the demon army, the prideful chief wouldn't let that go unanswered. For the moment, Denos f's ignorance, claiming he merely proposed an alliance with the smaller groups to help them survive by gaining the demon army's support. This explanation only fuels Augur's anger further, as he never authorized any negotiation. Everything is unfolding perfectly, though, because with or now visibly agitated, he becomes far more vulnerable to Den's negotiation techniques. Denos then calmly reveals that these alliances weren't orchestrated by him alone. He had Alulu's assistance. Augur can't believe that his own daughter would betray him like this, but she tells him it was necessary for the sake of their ogre tribe. The only way out of their current situation is to rely on the demon army's aid. As much as he may not want to admit it, times have changed. He's grown old and is currently sick, so they need to join the demon army to survive. Just then Denos chimes in and offers an alternative to Augur. Instead of joining the demon army, they could form an equal partnership. Truthfully, Denos is making this up. He hasn't altered a single detail of the agreement. However, by presenting it as an equal partnership, it appeals to the pride of the ogre chief, making him far more likely to consider it as anticipated. Augur doesn't appear entirely against the idea, but requests some time to mull it over. A couple of days later, Mandra comes running into Denos' office to share the good news. She tells Denos that AR has agreed to the alliance with a demon army. While this is great news, Denos has more pressing matters to handle. The demon lord told him to pick out an assistant, so he has been reviewing applications. Honestly, he wishes he could just pick Alandra since she's so reliable. Alandra misunderstands this as a proposal and becomes a little embarrassed. At that moment, there's a knock at the door. Denos opens it to find Alulu standing there. She announces that she's come to act as a representative of the ogre tribe in their alliance with the demon army. Expressing her deep gratitude, she explains that her father has become far more diplomatic since their encounter. To show her appreciation, she says she's willing to do anything to repay him. Taking her at her word, Denos asks if she would like to become his personal assistant. Alulu eagerly agrees, but this makes Mandra jealous, and she pointedly avoids making eye contact with Denos. She reminds herself that they're supposed to be rivals, which means she can't allow herself to be friends with him. Denos has no clue why Alandra suddenly started behaving so oddly. That aside, it's been a successful month for him. The demon army has expanded significantly. However, with growth comes heightened risk, so it's essential for everyone to remain vigilant. A few days go by, and Denisuk is busy working in his office as usual, when Alilu enters and informs him that she has successfully negotiated with the Wurbear tribe, just as he had requested. She explains that as long as their conditions are met, they are willing to support the demon army. Dennis is pleased to hear that the talks with the Wurbear tribe went smoothly, but Alilu has something else to share. She mentions that word has gotten around about Dennis being recognized for all the effort he has been putting in and that an awards ceremony will be taking place soon. She adds that she'll give him more details once his lunch break is over. Dennis has no clue what kind of award awaits him, but knowing the Demon Lord, he's confident it will be something far more exciting than a simple pizza party. At that moment, Alandra walks into Dennis's office, bringing lunch for the two of them to share, as they always do. While Denisuk enjoys eating with Alandra, he despises the fact that the demon army's menu is limited to plain porridge. He understands the challenges of providing meals for an entire army, but he can't help but wish for some meat to accompany the bland porridge. Hearing Dennis's complaints, Mandra comes up with the perfect idea. If he wants meat, then they'll just have to go straight to the source to get it. Denisuk is thrilled about the idea of going hunting just to satisfy his craving for meat. But that's not the only reason Alandra brought him out here. It turns out she received a request from the nearby Demium tribes asking for help in dealing with a magical beast that has been attacking them in this forest. So far, this creature has killed 5 orcs, and Denisuk finds that absolutely awful. Alandra, however, has a different perspective. She explains that it's only natural for the weak to fall prey to the strong. Ordinarily, it would be the responsibility of the orc tribe to protect themselves from threats like this, but the beast they're facing is far too powerful for them to handle. Not wanting to see the orc tribe wiped out, Mandra decided to take on the task herself. Speaking of which, Alandra notices some mushrooms growing under a tree. From what she was told, all the orcs that got eaten were attacked while picking these mushrooms, since they are a valuable ingredient. Therefore, the magical beast must be camping somewhere around here. If they wait long enough, then it's sure to attack. Evidently, they didn't have to wait long since the boar shows up behind them. Almost immediately, Alandra tells Denisuk to run for cover. While she handles this, she jumps into the air and heel kicks the boar's face into the ground. But in retaliation, the boar starts using its horns to throw rocks at Alandra, although she can easily dodge them. Denizo can't, so he's freaking out. The boar charges forward, crashing through trees and heading straight for Denisuk before it can reach him. Alandra delivers a solid punch to the boar's stomach. From Dennis's vantage point, it's obvious that Alandra is incredibly strong, but none of her hits so far have been lethal. In an ordinary fight, that might not matter, but their goal here is to hunt the creature. What Alandra is missing right now is the killing power needed to finish the job. The boar's sharp tusks make it a dangerous opponent, and one mistake on Mandra's part could prove fatal. Her attacks are causing blunt force damage, but she needs to wrap this up quickly. Denisuk thinks she needs a weapon. He was right about Alandra's blows not being strong enough to kill this thing as she is now. However, she has been holding back so far. She doesn't like using her true power because it takes a long time to recover from the effects, but she won't be able to kill this thing otherwise. The boar tries charging at her again, but this time Alandra is able to stop it with one hand. She could easily kill it with a single punch right now, but that might ruin its meat. So instead she picks it up and snaps its neck with the boar now defeated. Mandra tells Denisuk that they can finally have some meat. However, Denisuk has completely lost his appetite. Together they haul the boar's body to the orc village to show the villagers that the threat has been taken care of. The villagers are incredibly thankful for Mandra's help and amazed that she managed to take down the boar all by herself. While Mandra is clearly enjoying all the admiration, she notes that it's not every day they come across so much meat. She decides to invite the entire village to share the boar with her. The villagers are all excited, but Denizo can't believe they are actually okay with eating boar meat when that thing was one evolution cycle away from being their next-door neighbor. However, he's even more surprised when he hears Mandra say she's going to cook the meat. He asks her if she's really serious about cooking, so Mandra offers to give him a taste of her homemade delicacy. Dennis starts to feel genuinely excited as Mandra hypes up the meal, making it sound amazing. However, when he asks how she plans to prepare it, she simply throws a fireball at the meat. The result is a blackened lump of burnt flesh, and the expression on Dennis's face makes it clear this is absolute garbage. Alandra insists he give it a try, claiming it's better than it looks. But when Denisuk takes a bite, it tastes just as awful as it appears. It's like someone dumped molten tar into his mouth, and he'd honestly prefer to starve than endure another bite of this disaster. Alandra tells Denisuk it's rude to insult someone's cooking like that, but Denisuk retorts that it's rude to call what she just did cooking. He has been enduring the culture shock of living in a new world so far, but this is too much for him to handle. He asks if everyone can let him handle the cooking from now on. Once Denisuk is done preparing the meat, Alandra takes one bite and realizes it actually tastes amazing. She asks Denisuk what he did, and he explains that first he soaked the pork in water to get all the blood out. Then he slow roasted it over a fire to remove the excess fat, and finally added it to a soup to get rid of any bad smells. Denisuk suggests teaching the villagers if they're interested in learning, and they're thrilled that one of the demon generals is showing such thoughtfulness. However, Alandra feels that someone of Denis's rank shouldn't be wasting time teaching villagers how to cook. Denisuk disagrees, explaining that his role is to improve the demon army, and a key part of any civilization's progress lies in advancing their culinary skills. He points out that when people have regular access to meat, they naturally find ways to enhance its flavor. But since meat is such a rarity here, no one has the luxury to experiment. In other words, this country is both impoverished and lacking in culinary knowledge. It might sound harsh the way Denis says it, but Alandra can't deny that he's right. This country is largely barren, and compared to its neighboring nations, it's relatively weak. That's precisely why they need to put in the effort to bring about change as part of the Big Four. With their work here finished, Alandra suggests they head back to the castle, but Denisuk isn't so sure. It's a good idea, since night has already fallen. Mandra reassures him that it won't be an issue, as she can light their way with a fireball. She's really proud of her magic prowess, since it's an ability unique to demons, and Denisuk is quite impressed. It also makes sense why demi-humans who can't use magic train day in and out to become effective fighters, while demons like Alandra can rely solely on their magic. However, he thinks Alandra could stand to improve her combat techniques a little. For instance, even though her attack power rises dramatically when she uses her true power to transform her body, it takes a while for her body to recover. Afterward, he suggests that she should bring a weapon to help with combat next time, and also wear armor that covers more of her body. As soon as Denis says this, Alandra freezes in place and extinguishes her light. While she recognizes that he might be right, his fixation on efficiency comes across as deeply insulting to her too. Angry to stay near him, she decides to leave Denisuk behind in the forest. Denisuk, confused about why she got so upset, Quick L comes to the realization that lingering in this forest is a surefire way to end up as prey. Without wasting any more time, he bolts back to the orc village for safety. The next morning, Denisuk meets with the Demon Lord to give a report on the mission, and the Demon Lord congratulates him on his success. However, he also mentions that Mandra returned last night, while Denisuk only arrived this morning with an escort from the orcs. The Demon Lord wants to know if something bad happened between him and Alandra. Denis breaks down and says he's not worthy of being one of the demon army's generals. The Demon Lord urges Denis to calm down and explain what happened. So Denisuk recounts the entire situation. Recognizing that Denisuk unintentionally upset Mandra, the Demon Lord emphasizes that the priority now is to mend their relationship for the good of the demon army. He gives Denisuk an official order to find a way to make amends with her. However, that's easier said than done. Denis remembers how proud Alandra was when she mentioned that only demons are capable of using magic, but he suspects there's more to it than just that. Determined to find a solution, he begins reading a demon history book to gather some insight. Denisuk soon finds a chapter talking about how a strong physique is essential for a demon's magic power. This is why demons take great pride in their bodies and often wear extremely revealing clothes. Denisuk now understands why Mandra got so upset. When he told her it would be more efficient to wear armor that covers her body more, he was basically rejecting her pride as a demon. Even if he knows why she got mad, he has no idea how he's going to repair their relationship. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Alialu has just finished chopping firewood for the day and is preparing to move on to her next task. She's stunned to suddenly find herself facing a threatening wall of despair. Alandra, still upset over what happened with Denisuk, runs up to Alu in tears, crying that Denis hates her and refuses to appreciate her body. Alialu has no idea what's going on at first, but after Mandra explains what happened, she realizes where the misunderstanding might have come from. She tells Mandra that as a human, Denis's values are a lot different from theirs. In particular, Alialu knows that Denisuk doesn't think exposing your body is a good thing. Alandra can't believe it, since she's been exposing her body to him for weeks, and he never complained about it. Alialu explains that Denisuk likely assumed Alandra was just some kind of exhibist, which is why he never brought it up. Hearing this, Alandra suddenly realizes that if Denisuk was uncomfortable with her exposed body, then all the physical gestures of affection she had shown him might have seemed like inappropriate behavior. Overwhelmed with embarrassment and anger at herself for abandoning Denisuk in the forest, she begins slamming her face into the floor. Repeatedly, Alula pleads with her to stop, worried that the floor won't be able to withstand much more of her outburst. Alandra asks Alulu for advice on what she should do now. Since she got mad at Dennis for no reason, Alulu tells her about a discussion she had with him when she first became his assistant. He told Alulu that he wanted her to stay true to her desires, no matter what, because he wanted her to feel free to talk about any troubles she had, so they could come to a solution together, regardless of any misunderstandings. Alulu is sure Mandra can make up with Denisuk as long as they talk it out. Denisuk and Ol Mandra eventually cross paths in the sea castle stairwell, each with something important to get off their chest. Alandra blurts out that she's not trying to act like an easy girl. She just wanted him to compliment her body. At the same time, Denisuk admits that he thinks her body is attractive. They both pause for a moment to process each other's words, and realizing they're finally on the same page, Denizo takes the opportunity to apologize. He confesses that he didn't know much about demons and hadn't understood that his words would come across as offensive to her. Alandra accepts his apology and also apologizes to Denisuk. She acknowledges that it wasn't his fault that he didn't know about demon culture, and even if she was mad, she shouldn't have left him alone in the middle of the forest. Denisuk did nearly die because of that, so Mandra feels really guilty. But since he ended up being okay, Denisuk says he forgives her. He's glad they were able to make up, and now that they've gotten the chance to learn a little about one another, Denisuk thinks they can become great partners, although he still doesn't realize that Mandra interprets the word partner as a marriage proposal. Later, the Demon Lord summons all his subordinates for an important announcement. With alliances now established among the various tribes, the demon army has become significantly stronger than it was before, and it's all thanks to the tireless efforts of his newest general, Denisuk. To honor his accomplishments, the Demon Lord presents him with a magic stone. Denisuk feels deeply honored to receive such a priceless gift, but he humbly declines, explaining that he didn't achieve this alone. None of it would have been possible without Mandra's unwavering support by his side. Denisk steps up to Alandra, kneels before her, and asks her to accept the magic stone alongside him. While Alandra is thrilled, she also panics because Denisk is doing this in front of a crowd with so many onlookers. What Dennis doesn't realize is that presenting a magic stone to a woman is essentially a marriage proposal in this world. So without even knowing it, he proposed to her in front of all the leaders of the demon army. The only reason Alandra doesn't immediately say yes is that she's too embarrassed by all the eyes on her. A few days later, Denisuk is summoned to a meeting with the Demon Lord. He's absolutely terrified. Assuming he must have done something wrong to get ahead of the situation, he immediately starts apologizing and desperately pleads to keep his job. The Demon Lord, caught off guard by Dennis's reaction, reassures him that he's not in trouble at all. In fact, they recently held an awards ceremony to celebrate how exceptional he is at his work with that. Out of the way, the Demon Lord mentions that there's something he wants to talk about. He then asks Denisuk for his opinion on the current relationship between the demi-humans and the demons serving in the demon army. Based on what Denisuk has observed firsthand, it seems that the demi-humans feel inferior to the demons primarily because only demons possess the ability to use magic. This is precisely the issue the Demon Lord has been working to resolve. He tasks Denisuk with finding a way to make magic accessible to everyone so that the demi-humans can stand on equal footing with the demons. While Denisuk agrees that it's a solid plan, there's one significant issue. He himself is incapable of using magic, so how is he supposed to figure out a method to make it usable for everyone? The Demon Lord acknowledges that it's a challenging task, which is precisely why he has given Denisuk a magic stone. He grants Denisuk full authority to decide how to use it in order to accomplish his mission. Knowing Denisuk won't be able to handle this alone, the Demon Lord assigns a magic specialist to assist him. That specialist is Silid, and the Demon Lord assures Denisuk that Svid is highly skilled when it comes to magic. However, he warns Denisuk to stay cautious, as Suid is notoriously difficult to deal with. Denisuk nods in understanding and exits the Demon Lord's throne room to search for Sid. While this is happening, Alandra watches Nook from behind the railing. For the past few days, she's been spying on him whenever she gets the chance, not only because she's curious about how his work is progressing, but also because she's still bubbling with excitement. From Dennis's marriage proposal a few days earlier, Denisk eventually makes it to Sid's room and knocks on the door. However, it's Belinda who answers. She informs him that Suid isn't there at the moment and tells him he'll need to come back later. As she attempts to shut the door, Dennis quickly wedges his foot in the doorway, insisting on coming in regardless. Alandra witnesses all of this unfold and begins to feel upset, wondering why Denisuk would flirt with another woman after proposing to her. Meanwhile, inside Sid's room, Belinda keeps trying to persuade Denisuk to leave, insisting that Silid isn't there. However, Denisuk isn't falling for it because he knows the truth. Belinda is actually Silid. She tries to deny it, but Denisuk has 3 solid reasons to believe she's lying. First, he's memorized the roster of all Demon Army officials, and there's no one named Belinda on the list. Second, the Demon Lord already spilled the beans and told him that Silid likes to disguise herself to avoid work. Sid has clearly been caught, so she admits that Denizo is right about her, but he still doesn't understand why she would pretend to be her own assistant. Silid simply explains that if everyone knew her real identity, then they'd start giving her tons of work to do, and she hates work. Be that as it may, Dennis has some work he needs to discuss with her, so he asks Silid if she can spare some time to talk about magic tools with him. However, Svid refuses to do anything that requires effort, even if it's under direct orders from the Demon Lord. Besides, she already made something like that in the past, so she has no reason to recreate it now. Denisuk is completely unaware that Silid had experimented with creating magic tools in the past. Noticing his interest, she decides to show him one of her inventions. She pulls out an object and explains that it's constructed from a mineral base designed to easily conduct magic, with layers of magic stone integrated into it. This setup enables it to cast all kinds of magic, which sounds exactly like what Denisuk has been searching for. He immediately asks Sid if he can get permission to mass-produce it. Sid responds that he's free to do whatever he wants, but there's one major issue. The prototype alone costs $10 million to make to fund mass production. He's going to need an exceptionally good financial strategy, since the device relies on high-level magic stones for its construction. It's no surprise that the cost is so high. Denu, however, is still stunned after hearing just how expensive these devices are, and he finally understands why Sulfit never moved forward with mass production. But he refuses to give up, so easily determined to find a solution. He asks her if it might be possible to reduce the number of spells the device can cast. Based on what S explained, the device needs high-level magic stones to enable it to cast multiple types of magic, so he proposes simplifying it to focus on just a single spell. Silid is intrigued because she had never thought of it that way. After a little thinking, she confirms that limiting the device to one spell would significantly reduce the cost, since low-level magic stones could be used in production instead. She's really impressed that Denisuk was able to come up with that idea in such a short amount of time, and it just so happens that he has a magic stone on hand. So he asks Fid if this will work. Sid is starting to get invested in this idea, and since they already have all the necessary materials, she's ready to begin work right away. But she needs an assistant to help, so she drags Denizo down into her basement, and she doesn't plan on letting him sleep tonight. Meanwhile, outside Sid's room, Bandra starts to grow suspicious, questioning what Denizo could possibly be doing in Sid's office with a woman so late at night. By the next morning, Denisuk is shown slumped on the basement floor, barely conscious from a severe lack of sleep. Svid, though equally sleep-deprived, is bursting with excitement. She successfully redesigned her magic tool to cast just a single spell, which means it can now be mass-produced at a fraction of the cost compared to the original model, all thanks to her brilliance. However, before they can begin mass production, they still need to test it, so she tells Denisuk that he's going to be the test subject. Denisuk pleads with her to at least give him some time to rest, since he's on the verge of collapse. Silid allows him to leave, but says she's only giving him a 1-hour break before he comes back, so they can start testing this thing. As Denisuk heads back to the front door, he's about to open it, but before he can do anything, Alandra barges in and demands to know what Denisuk has been doing all night. Alandra's actions result in Denisuk getting knocked unconscious, so she quickly drops to her knees and starts shaking him in an attempt to wake him up. Unfortunately, all the shaking only makes him feel dizzy. At that moment, Silid emerges from the basement, now dressed in her usual outfit to ensure that Alandra doesn't recognize her as the woman from earlier. Alandra is starting to question if what she saw earlier was right, but all of a sudden Mandra's assistant, Lum and Alyalu, enter the room as well, because there's a huge emergency. A flock of footprint birds has just attacked a few villages, and if nothing is done soon, those will be destroyed. Footprint birds are large, flightless birds known for their vicious nature, and they are such a threat that the Demon Lord has ordered them to do whatever it takes to exterminate those birds. That's why Lilan came looking for Mandra, since she's the only person capable of dealing with such a large flock. As she's being dragged away, Alandra voices her disappointment, lamenting that she wants to spend more time with Denisuk. Meanwhile, Scylla sees this as the perfect chance to test her newly redesigned magic device. She plans to take Denisuk out to the battlefield to give it a try. Once outside, Denisuk warns the locals to step back, as what they're about to do might be dangerous. Svid sets the magic stone to cast a basic fire magic spell and hands it over to Denisuk to test. Before proceeding, Denisuk nervously asks if the device has any safety features. Suid casually assures him that even if it explodes, the worst that would happen is he'd lose an arm. That response doesn't exact reassure him, but despite the risks, he decides to give it a shot anyway. As the flock of footprint birds approaches, Svid instructs him to start channeling power from the device. It makes a strange sound when Denizo powers it up, but Sid tells him that's just how it operates now. She wants Denisuk to imagine that the device is an extension of his own body and let the energy flow until it accumulates in his right hand. Denisuk follows her instructions, and before long he has formed a fireball in his hand. Denisuk is amazed that he was actually able to use magic, since the first phase was a success. Scylla tells him to begin attacking the birds. Denisuk isn't entirely sure this will work, but he throws a fireball at one of the birds anyway, and it completely obliterates it. Encouraged by this success, Sid urges him to keep going until all the birds are taken care of. Denisuk then starts launching fireball after fireball, and for the first time since arriving in this world, he feels genuinely strong, as though he's capable of holding his own in a fight. However, that sense of power is short-lived. In the very next moment, the magic device burns out, leaving him unable to use magic anymore. As one of the birds swoops in ready to finish him off, Suid quickly raises a barrier around him. Just in time, Denizo tries using the device again, but this time it just seems to be slowly attracting the birds. Instead of allowing Denisuk to use magic, Suid takes care of the birds that were coming after Denis, and then she asks him why he isn't using the device to cast magic anymore. He shows her the crystal, and it's clearly been overloaded. It looks like low-level magic crystals aren't enough to maintain the device after all. So this experiment is a failure. For now, they did manage to drive the birds away, so the villagers celebrate by making a pot of stew with the bird meat. While Denizo is getting a bowl of stew, Scylla is over by the tree playing with one of the Demium children. Danu comes over and expresses his surprise because he was under the impression that all demi-humans were strong, but he had no idea that some of them were this weak. Scylla agrees with him, but even though they are weak, demi-humans like them are still very kind, and it reminds her a bit of her past. Sid was born into a merchant family of elves, but things went wrong and she ended up getting kicked out. She then lived as a wanderer for a while, until she was welcomed into a village of demi-humans. The demi-humans treated Scylla with inedible kindness, but since none of them could use magic, they were forced to live in poverty. Wanting to help, Scylla dedicated herself to creating a device that would enable them to use magic. However, somewhere along the way, she became distracted and lost sight of her original purpose. Turning to Denisuk, she confesses that her ultimate goal as a researcher is to help people, which is why they must ensure the success of this project at all costs, especially since it's only a matter of time before more of those birds attack the village again. Dennis Sue thinks about it for a minute and comes up with a great idea. He asks Fid if she can make more of those magic devices by tomorrow morning, since she already created the designs. It shouldn't take long to make more, but she won't be able to make any improvements to the design without her tools. Dennis tells her she doesn't need to make any improvements, since what he's trying to do will work with the current design. The following morning, Dennis and Svid set out to face the flock of birds, heading toward the village. Before the birds can reach their destination, Denisuk activates the magic devices he had planted in the ground earlier. The noise generated by all the devices powering on at once is so unsettling to the birds that they immediately abandon their plans to attack the village and retreat. The best part is that, since no actual spells were cast, the magic stones within the devices remain largely intact, ensuring they'll last for a long time. This means the remote villages can stay protected while significantly cutting costs. The Demon Lord is thoroughly impressed with the innovation Denisuk and Scylla managed to achieve. He praises both of them and instructs Scylla to begin mass-producing the magic devices so they can be distributed to all the villages in need. Shortly afterward, Denisuk meets with Svid to express his gratitude, acknowledging that he never could have accomplished this on his own without her help. In turn, Svid thanks Denisuk for rekindling her excitement for her research and reminding her that her work is ultimately about helping others. Feeling genuinely appreciative, she tells him that if he ever needs assistance with anything in the future, he should feel free to come to her before leaving Scylla's hands. Denisk, a special magic device she crafted just for him. Unlike the standard models, which could only handle up to 10 spells, this one can manage at least 30, ensuring it will be a reliable tool if he ever finds himself in danger. Feeling encouraged, Den Isaac returns to his office more determined than ever to tackle his paperwork. However, before he can even begin, he's knocked out when Alandra bursts into the room. Having just learned about his research assignment with Scylla, she came to apologize for assuming he was flirting with another woman, despite proposing to her. But when she sees him lying unconscious on the floor, she panics and rushes to check if he's okay. Later, Denisuk invites Alandra to join him on a shopping trip. Alandra, feeling incredibly nervous about the invitation, decides to seek advice from Alilu to her. Being asked to go shopping with him can only mean one thing. Denisuk is asking her out on a date. With that in mind, Alandra plans to go all out to make a lasting impression. Her initial idea is to wear nothing but a bikini, thinking it will highlight her figure and leave a bold impression. However, Alilu advises against this approach, pointing out that such an outfit might make Denisk uncomfortable due to its revealing nature. Instead, she suggests opting for something more modest. Taking Alulu's advice, Mandra chooses a more conservative outfit, and, to her relief, Denisk seems to genuinely like her choice. Feeling encouraged by his reaction, she believes the date is going well and hopes it might strengthen her relationship with him, potentially taking it to the next level. Unfortunately, since this is Dennis, we're talking about the real reason he invited Mandra on the shopping trip was to conduct market research. When Mandra realizes this wasn't a date after all, she feels deeply betrayed. Her frustration boils over and she's practically seething with anger. Despite her annoyance, she still decides to support Denisuk and asks him about the purpose of his research. Denizo explains that gathering the opinions of locals can provide him with fresh perspectives, which might help in improving the demon army. However, for the moment, he mentions that he simply wants to enjoy the scenery with Mandra, leaving her momentarily flustered. But even then, it's still not a date. As they approach one of the stalls, the owner immediately recognizes Denisuk as one of the elite generals of the demon army. Denisuk is taken aback that people know who he is, but it turns out there have been rumors circulating about a human personally summoned by the demon lord, and his distinctive suit certainly doesn't help him blend in. The stall owner also recognizes Mandra, and seeing the two of them together, he assumes they're on a date. However, Mandra quickly denies this, as Dennis has already made it clear that the outing is strictly work-related. She explains that they are there to conduct market research. Hearing this, the stall owner offers to show them some of his finest goods and exquisite set of pure gold ornaments. Wanting to make the most of this rare opportunity to serve a general of the demon army, he even offers a discount on a pair of matching cups if they decide to purchase them together. The stall owner begins to explain that these cups are typically purchased by couples who are about to get married. Without a second thought, Denizo casually states that he wants to buy the set for himself and Alandra, which leaves her with mixed feelings. To Alandra, it almost seems like Denizo is flirting with her, but the truth is far less romantic. He only bought the cups to gather more information from the shopkeeper. Once again, Mandra is left feeling disappointed. After wrapping up a bit more of their investigation, Denisuk sits down with her over some coffee to review the results of their research. According to his findings, the recent alliances formed with the other Demium territory stories have been well received by the people, so the different cultures are integrating nicely. However, this has also led to some negative side effects. Specifically, the increase in population has caused an unprecedented food shortage, and the price of staple crops like gem is too high for people to afford. Alandra noticed the rising prices too. She went to one of the food retailers and demanded to know why they were making gem so expensive. But even while being violently shaken, the retailer told her that he can't afford to lower his prices, otherwise he would go into debt. The price of gem is clearly being inflated, but if the retailers aren't the ones behind the price hikes, then the wholesalers must be responsible. Wholesalers are tasked with distributing goods after purchasing them in bulk from farmers. Normally, this system operates smoothly, but there's a possibility that the wholesalers are intentionally raising the price of gem to increase their profits. As a result, retailers who are forced to buy at the inflated rates have no choice but to raise their own prices to stay afloat. Believing that the wholesalers are likely the culprits, Mandra suggests they storm into the wholesaler building and demand that the prices be returned to normal. However, Denisuk doesn't think that's a good idea, since what he said about the wholesalers being responsible is still pure speculation right now. They can't risk making the wholesalers angry, because it could cause a national disaster if they aren't careful. Wholesalers are managed by a large commercial guild and they command a fair bit of power, so before they act, they need to gather more information regarding the matter. With that said, Denisuk says they are done with their market research for the day, but there's still a lot of time before they have to return to the castle. So Denisuk asks Mandra if there's anything she wants to try. In the meantime, Alandra feels a surge of excitement, thinking this might finally be her chance to enjoy a proper date with Denisuk. However, her hopes for some alone time are quickly dashed when Gnomes suddenly shows up. Denizo, surprised by her appearance, asks if she's out shopping as well. Gnome explains that today is a significant day for her people, and she's here to buy gifts for those she cares about. In this instance, she's purchasing gifts for her comrades from the demon army. However, her lingering grudge against Alandra ensures that Alandra won't be receiving anything from her just then. Gnome is approached by two rat demi-humans, and they plead with her to help save their store from bankrupt. Why these two seem pretty desperate, so Dennis and the others decide to follow them back to their store and ask what the problem is. The rat couple explains that they have run the store for years and sold a food called shimazu, but year after year their sales have been declining, so they have been struggling to stay in business for a while. Recently, however, they were approached by a prominent merchant named Bwalin, who placed a large order with them, claiming he could make a substantial profit by reselling the chimajim has become so expensive these days. Overjoyed by the prospect of such a big sale, the couple worked tirelessly through the night, using up every last ingredient. They had to complete Buddy Gallon's order, but this morning, when he was supposed to pick it up, he abruptly backed out of the deal, stating he was no longer interested. Now the couple is stuck with an enormous amount of unsold product, and if they don't act quickly, they'll face bankruptcy from all the money they invested. The problem is definitely serious, but No can't think of any way to solve it. So she turns to Denisuk because she had heard that he's a good problem solver. She asks him if he has any ideas on how they can help the couple save their store, and thankfully, with the information he gathered from the market today, Denizo says he has the perfect solution. Gnome asks if he is really sure he can handle this. So Denisuk assures her that his plan will work, meaning she can leave the rest to him. The first step in Dennis's plan is to have the couple clearly state their objective. So he asks them to specify exactly what they hope to achieve. Since Chimu has a shelf life of just one day, they need to sell all 300 servings that were prepared before the day ends. Denizo had the chance to try some of the Chimu earlier, and it reminded him of Makai from Japan. However, it's missing one crucial element. Like Makai, Chimuza doesn't have much flavor on its own, making it an excellent base to pair with various side dishes and spices to make it more appealing. Now the only thing to do is decide what flavor they would like to add to the Chimu. Denisuk asks the couple about their usual customer base. They answer saying that since Chimu is a traditional food, it isn't really popular among young people, but now it is even losing popularity among older people as well. To be honest, the couple can understand why, since they too are getting sick of the bland flavor. Alandra can't believe the rats chose to continue selling Chimu when even they don't like it anymore. But that's beside the point. They don't have much time before the Chimu goes bad. So Denisuk suggests that they split up the workload. He and the couple will stay here and think of good flavors to pair with the Chimu, while Mandro will go to the stores. He wrote down on a list and asked for their assistance with his plan. After gathering everything they need, Denisuk heads into the market with a drum set to capture the crowd's attention. He announces that today is Ruya Day and invites everyone to join in the festivities he has planned. The crowd seems intrigued by the lively atmosphere and curious about what Ruya Day is, as they've never heard of it. Before seeing their interest, Denisuk begins explaining the holiday. He recounts an old legend about a beautiful girl and a man who sold shimazu. The two met by chance in the market one day and fell in love at first sight. However, a powerful man desired the girl for himself and wanted to make her his bride. When she rejected the king's proposal, he became consumed with jealousy and forbade her from ever seeing the man she loved again. However, the two of them still snuck out to meet one another, and under the starry night sky, they both ate chimu and wished that they could live together without sneaking around. That's when their prayers were answered by the heavens, and the two of them were pulled up into the night sky to live happily ever after. This legend is the basis of the Ruya festival, and it is said that if you exchange chimu with a loved one and eat it together, your wish might come true. The crowd seems really intrigued by Dennis's story, so they want to buy some chimu and try out the tradition. It just so happens that Denisuk knows a couple who have a boatload of chimu in stock. Most people think of chimu as a bland and unexciting snack, but after some brainstorming with Denisuk, the couple managed to transform it by introducing new and innovative variations. The result is a hit. The crowd starts buying chimu in large quantities. Even though Alandra had complete confidence in Dennis's ability to find a solution, she's still and that he managed to convince so many young people to enjoy a snack traditionally associated with older generations. Dennis explains that when a product's popularity is declining, the key to reviving it is to shift the target audience. During their earlier market research, Denisuk noticed that the market was bustling with young people and families, making them the perfect demographic to focus on with the new marketing strategy and flavors. Denisuk wouldn't be surprised if Chimu became the best-selling item in the market overnight. In fact, he's already thinking of plans to open chain stores and expand overseas to increase profits. But Mandris snaps him out of his business dream. Later that night, as the crowd starts dying down, Denizo and Alandra go to meet the couple. The couple can't thank them enough for their help, because they managed to sell all their stock thanks to them. Dennis tells them not to worry about it, because their success wasn't because of him alone. It was also due to their own hard work, Alandra's help, and Gnome as well. Gnome may have left early on, but throughout the day, Denizo heard from several demi-humans that Gnome had recommended the Chima store to them. It's clear she spread the word to help out, even if she didn't stick around. To express their gratitude, the couple offers Denisuk and Alandra a plate of Chimu to share, which Denisuk happily accepts. Alandra starts blushing, as she recalls the legend about sharing shimazu with someone you love, that doing so could make your wish come true. For Denisuk to so eagerly share the plate with her must mean something special. She tries to keep her excitement in check, but then Dennis pulls out the wedding cups he bought earlier and announces that he wants to give one of them to her. The evidence that he wants to marry her is overwhelming at this point. So Alandra asks him what he plans to wish for while they share the Chimu. Without skipping a beat, Denisuk answers that he plans to wish for the success of his next project. Alandra is once again disappointed. Later that night, Denizo goes to meet with the Demon Lord because he has something important to discuss with him. During his market research today, he managed to discover a lot of useful information. But most notably, he discovered these golden ornaments for sale. These ornaments originated from a nearby nation known as the Golden Country due to its abundant gold mines. If the Demon Lord intends to expand the demon army, Denisuk suggests establishing trade ties with the Golden Country. The Demon Lord agrees that this is an excellent idea and declares that trade negotiations will begin as soon as possible. He already has the perfect item in mind for trade, one of the magic devices. However, Denisuk immediately expresses his concerns, arguing that the magic devices are advanced technology, unique to the demon army, and shouldn't be sold so easily. Despite Dennis's hesitation, the Demon Lord has a different perspective on the matter. No matter what precautions they take, the technology will inevitably be stolen by outsiders or replicate at some point. However, what cannot be replicated is talent. As long as the Demon Lord has skilled individuals, like his 4 generals, by his side, he is confident that they will continue to develop even more advanced magical devices in the future. He entrusts Denisuk with the responsibility of managing all the trade negotiations, but also cautions him to tread carefully, as the king of the Golden Country is known to be a formidable one. Watch this next video on screen and subscribe to not miss next part.